It has been my life's work to convince everyone that Return to Oz is the greatest film ever made. Now, some of you, I know you already know that, but a few of you, you were dragged to the screening right now. And they're deciding if they're going to stay with you. But here's the thing, is you've got to let these people watch the movie for themselves. You can't, like, talk throughout the entire movie. You have it memorized. And you can't, like, elbow them saying, oh, I love this part. Oh, I love this part.
That's a lot.
Because there are a lot of people who've never seen Return to Oz. Please raise your hand proudly if you've never seen this.
What? What?
Here,
What the? That's crazy. How many people
people are booing you for some reason. And that just means they're old.
Accurate.
It's the 40th anniversary of Return to Oz. We have a 35mm print from the Disney archive. And if we could give a round of applause to Jeff Root, our projectionist tonight. He's been projecting here for 23 years. And he said that this film print maybe has never been screened. It's so beautiful. Now, a lot of you might not know, but we have Hollywood royalty in the house. And I don't mean, you know, the legend Walter Murch. Because he's the king. I mean, people sitting next to you, working within the industry, in front of the camera, behind the camera. There are so many Bay Area legends with us tonight, and I'd love to give all of you my tribute for working on all of the work that you have done. And I do. I mean, if you run a movie theater, or if you worked on a visual effects shot, or if you just have told people throughout your life a movie to watch that they wouldn't have prior to that, you are part of this universe of respecting art that often is considered cheap entertainment for cheap people. And so with that, I would like to introduce the 3-time Oscar winner, 9-time nominated, and just one of the most incredible filmmakers alive, Walter Murch.
Thank you, Jesse. I've been waiting 41 years for such a lovely audience for this one. And it's really been worth it. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, we're going to have a Q&A after the screening for those of you who would like to stick around. But before we start the movie, I wanted to do sort of a speed round with Mr. Murch here, because there are so many things that you have changed about cinema, and knowing that Return to Oz was not respected in the way that I felt it should, I feel that it was misunderstood.
That's the case.
And that's very different than, I think a lot of you love movies because they're so bad that they're good. Return to Oz does not fall into this category at all. And so I wanted to bring up a couple of people that were part of this film that may make this more interesting for those of you who didn't know that the director would be here. Now, first off, this was nominated for an Academy Award.
It was.
What?
Somebody noticed all of the hard work, and I would love for you to just talk about Mr. Will Vinton, the team that worked on this film for a moment.
Yeah. In the planning of this film, when you read the books, you see an army of gnome, short gnome people made out of rock. And I was wondering, how am I ever going to do this? And I saw a film that Will Vinton had made, animated film, and I was astonished at the sensitivity of the facial expressions in his claymation. And I thought, as I was driving home, I thought, wait a minute, clay is just soft rock. So what we can do is use this technique to create the Gnome King and all of the gnomes as animation, rather than hiring actors to run around in gray rock costumes. So one thing led to another, and I think that decision was one of the things that convinced Disney to actually give the film a green light, because otherwise it was just nobody knew how that was going to happen.
Now, another misunderstanding that everyone is guilty of is that when a sequel is made, there's instant groaning. And we run into a dilemma where if we love the first film, we want it to be exactly the same, but then we want it to be completely different. And so I love the story of how you even pitched this sequel.
Yeah, I eventually came around to the idea that this film is like that the original books were like the sun that controlled everything. And in 1939, a planet began to revolve around this sun, and that was the Judy Garland film. And this was another planet, a little further out, a little stranger, but that it was not a sequel to the 39 film in any stylistic way, but it was based out of the premise of what would actually happen if a family out on the plains in Kansas had their house destroyed by a tornado, and the girl who lived there was swept away. And when they found her, she had this strange story to tell. What would they do? Would they want the girl to forget about this crazy thing? So it was out of that dilemma that the seed of the film took hold.
So, in a sense, this is based on the actual L. Frank Baum sequels, books 2 and 3, and perhaps this is why the movie was deemed scary. For a lot of people who have told me they were completely traumatized at the age of 8 when they walked into a story from the turn of the century.
Right? Yeah, it is. On a certain level, we were just following what the books did. I mean, the books have the story of the woman, the witch with the detachable head.
People haven't seen it yet.
But reading it on the page is one thing, but actually seeing it on screen with sound and music and everything else is something else. So the temperature, the heat gets turned way up when you watch a film compared to what happens when you read a book.
Now, this is why I think you did an extraordinary job with the movie, is that there was no Pixar at this time. And those of you who've seen Toy Story 3 need to be prepared for Return to Oz. Because it is, I think, helping children confront I think I saw some children here under the age of 13 confront some very serious subject matters, and I think you purposely did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dilemma that we all face frequently, is the world wants us to forget what our dream is, whatever it might be. And how do you defend yourself against that dream? And what, in Dorothy's case, she makes allies of the most unlikely creatures. The wind-up robot TikTok, and the hen Belina, and Jack Pumpkinhead, and the Gump. And they are this kind of army of Oz who go to the Gnome King, to the mountain, to retrieve the Scarecrow and make everything better again. But really, fundamentally, she's going to find a way to keep the dream that she had alive. And many times in real life, the world will conspire to ask you to just forget about whatever that was. And this is a film that says, don't do that. You know, do whatever you have to do to defend it.
Dorothy is played by Fairuza Balk.
Yes.
And you found her.
Indeed. Yeah.
And it took you a long time.
Well, we looked at 1,200 girls all over the United States and Canada, and it, in many, many cities, open call, and we pulled it down to 60 of those 1,200. And then we pulled that down to 12, with whom we shot video screen tests. And then it came down to 2. And by that time, sets were being built in London, and costumes were made, and some of the characters, Jack Pumpkinhead was almost finished. And so we were able to shoot on film in 35mm tests with both of these girls. And they were both wonderful, but I was also, aware because of film history that being a child actor in a big film is a risky business. And what happens to you as you grow up? And they were both good, but Fairuza was absolutely comfortable in this world. We would be shooting a test with her, and we'd say, where is she? And in the dark, she had climbed up to the top of some scaffolding and was laughing at us from way up. So I thought any 9-year-old in a strange country with all of this strange stuff in the dark, if that's how she metabolizes that experience, I think she can take it and deliver it. And she absolutely did.
She does, right? I just have 2 more things. First, or second to last, is the Jim Henson Puppet Factory.
Absolutely.
And specifically, Brian Henson, this is his first starring role.
That's right, yeah.
As Jack Pumpkinhead.
Yeah.
And utilizing utilizing these puppets as well as Brian Henson, did you know that they were going to change all of our lives?
Yeah, I think when I was, I got this call from Disney. They were on a fishing expedition, and did I want to come to LA and talk to them about making a film? And what film it was up to me. They were just sort of flailing around looking for new material. And I thought, well, why don't I propose a sequel to The Wizard of Oz? Because when I was growing up, my mother had read those books to me. She had read them as a kid and was highly influenced by them. And so much of my imaginative life as a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old was made by reading these books. But the thing that turned the lock for me was that our son at that time was 3 years old, and Sesame Street was on. and I would watch Sesame Street, and I would watch the Muppets, and there was something about both the sensibility and the technology of Muppetry that made me think this could be the fusion in the film, that we could use Muppet sensibility and Muppet technology to create these characters. So that was one of the, when I went to Disney and started talking about this, that was one of the things that kind of made them think, yes, this might be good. The other one, which I had no idea about, the executive Tom Wilhite was sitting at his desk and I was saying, let's make a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. And he sort of straightened up and cleared his throat and he said, well, you know, we own the rights to all of those books, which I had no idea. But Walt Disney had bought them in the 1950s and had actually done a series of tests with Annette Funicello as Dorothy. But it never took off. So this idea was a ticking time bomb at Disney because the rights were going to run out in 1987. 1987. So they were anxious. That was another reason to get this, to start moving ahead with it.
You're truly visionary, and very often you're talked about for the Godfather films and The Conversation, and for The English Patient, and we will talk about a lot of these things after the film. But I need you to know that this is my dream to be screening this movie with you today. Thank you for being here.
We had a series of screenings at the American Cinematheque in Los Angeles at the end of January. And they screened Conversation and Return to Oz and Apocalypse Now. And I was sitting in the Egyptian Theater, another wonderful palace theater, with not as many as you, but a good full house. And sitting there watching the film in 2025, I began to look at the Gnome King in a slightly different way because of the
Yes!
Yes,
so
Queen.
just keep that idea in the back of your head.
Mr. Walter Murch.
Yeah!
Getting ready to watch a movie here in really a church of cinema. I would love for you to turn your phones off and your watches and anything else that makes a noise. I deputize any of you sitting around someone who is...
Oh my God, yes.
What did I tell you? Yeah, this is bad. I'd have nightmares.
Something's up with the sound. It's okay, I know all the words. They'll figure it out. It is not for small children, neither is for turned on. Is this the Care Bears? Rainbow Bright!
Come on, Adora. Get a clean.
Unleashing their power on the most evil forces ever to menace the universe. Miserable, those tiny fools. Just like the old days. Fantasy. This is the dawn of the most incredible adventure of all. With six-track Dolby Stereo. He-Man and She-Ra in The Secret of the Sword. A martial arts champion is searching the globe.
Shut up, go
A rock and roll star on the rise. A madman.
Oh, yeah.
A maniac. My video on your show, huh?
The answer is no.
And the glamour, the power, and the sound of Motown.
I don't want you to kill anybody.
You are lying. The Leroy Green I'm looking for. No mom thinks he can come fast. No, that's...
Should like masturbating.
This is very gorgeous. The last Friday. It's about the power of the globe. Time out. Vanity. Very gorgeous. The last Friday.
So no? Yes!
They were just like everyone else. They dreamed of going to the stars. But unlike everyone else,
What's going on here?
they discovered a way to get there.
You can I joined and how you?
Then they took it one step further. And it worked. Now they're about to find out just how far it can go.
Listen, somebody's comments.
Explorers,
Recovery peace.
the adventure begins in your own backyard.
The 80s were such a crazy time. Just kidding. Nothing's coming to a theater near you.
gets to interact with movies in a different way. And being a child watching this in the 80s, then as you grow up, you start to relate to different characters. And you have this process with all of cinema that the movie doesn't necessarily change, but you do. And as Walter was sort of saying before the movie started, I'm sure this film resonates differently in 2026 than it did in 1985. Who designed this poster, and why did you feel this poster was so important?
Well, this was done by Drew Struzan, and who we're celebrating today, I think. And he saw a cut of the film. It wasn't the final cut. It was an assembly that was on the way to being finished. And this was the poster that he came up with. And I thought, this is wonderful. It is very bold because it gets at something that will prepare the audience for how different this film was from the 1939 film. And I lobbied for this. But the studio thought, no, this is not what we want. We want something that will bring in the family audience. And I said, yes, but you also have to prepare them for the differences. And anyway, that conversation didn't go anywhere. They came up with, Drew did a different poster. No, okay. And then, for some mysterious reason, the studio deep-sixed that poster in the last 6 weeks before the film got released. And what they used was something that looked like it was assembled in the dark by people who did not know what they were doing, which may have been the point. That regime at Disney was 2 generations away from the regime that had started the project in the first place. So Return to Oz was a very distant project as far as they were concerned.
Now there's one very exciting thing to say. All of you who were able to get a copy of Suddenly Something Clicked, those of you who already have a copy of this, what's so wonderful about your writing is that you're not stuffy, and you're also very technical and learning from, I feel like everyone learns from you, if it's listening to you or reading your work, and you have another book already written, which has a huge chapter devoted to Return to Oz.
Yes, yeah. In fact, there are 2 more books. There is this book that we were just displaying is about film editing and sound design. The middle book which is called Pandemic of Desire, is about production. It's about the writing process, the casting process, directing, producing, and previewing. And as a case study of what happens in the process, the last 5 or 6 chapters are about Return to Oz and how it got started, some of which we talked about earlier. And then the fact that I was fired 5 weeks into the shooting and lived in a kind of limbo for a week. Filmmakers came to my rescue. Phil Kaufman, who is here tonight, came. Francis Coppola came. George Lucas came. And collectively, they all did a kind of Jedi mind trick on Disney and said, "You will hire Walter back again." And so it came to be. A week later, I was back directing again, but it was you know, it was a very quick immersion in a acid bath of, it's not an experience that you want to have. And I think, I did a rough survey of film history, asking what directors have been fired during shooting who were rehired during shooting. And apparently there were two. There was me and Jean Renoir, the French director. But in his case, he was fired in the afternoon and rehired at night. So I did that experience of being outside the pod bay door, basically. Mike Kitchens, who was here tonight, the associate producer, kept the flames alive so that although I was fired, we kept shooting. And based on the storyboards by Mike Klug and just the inertia of a film, you can keep going kind of with that inertia for a while. I don't know that we could have done 2 or 3 weeks, but a week we could just about manage because it was already planned. And I would phone in to Mike and say, what's up today? And then I would make, we would have a conversation, and finally I got back in the director's chair.
Was it illegal for you to be calling?
What?
Was it illegal for you to be calling in on a set?
I don't know.
Now, he has shared these pages with me, and I can tell you it is a gripping story. I don't want to ruin things from the book, but I do want to ask a couple of questions that stood out for me in regards to Return to Oz. And one is the casting of Toto.
Yes.
Toto's in the movie for a short time, but you love Toto so much because of this actor, and I would love for you to talk about the actor of Toto.
Well, in pre-production, you meet with all the heads of departments, costume, hairdressing, makeup, and everything, and you go around like it's like a kitchen. You go around sampling the dishes, and then a week later you sample it again, and you keep the ball turning. One of the heads of departments was Mike Culling, who was the animal wrangler, and he was the guy who did the snakes in Indiana Jones. So this is a guy you don't fool around with. And so he came with his pad and he said, okay, what kind of animals do we have in the film? I said, well, we have, the usual period pieces, horses, and yes, no problem. I think we're going to have a little problem with chickens because there's a chicken who talks and does certain things. The chicken has to attack zombies. The chicken has to be a foo fighter. And other things, and this didn't faze him at all. He said, yeah, no, that's no problem. Okay, how's that going to happen? The secret is that you get 5 or 6 chickens who all look the same, and then you study them for their behavioral quirks. And one of them seems more violent than the others, and that's the one that you pick to be the fighter. So there's actually many chickens in the film, all pretending to be the same chicken, in addition to the puppet chicken. Anyway, finally I said, oh yeah, there's also a dog, a terrier. Yeah, okay. What does a terrier have to do? Well, a terrier, he's not in a lot of the film, but he has to howl. And Mike dropped his pad at this point and he said, coldly, terriers don't howl. I said, what do you mean? And here I was in England, which is the kingdom of dog lovers, No, he said, and he gave me a lecture about the DNA of dogs, that there was a split between the wolf-type dog and Bernards, St. Bernards, and German Shepherds, and the smaller dogs like terriers. And as a result of inbreeding or whatever, the terriers lost the ability to howl. So we said, can you make it a German Shepherd? I said, no way. And he said, well, I don't know what we can do. So I went away with a very bad headache. And that evening, providentially, we went to dinner with, in London with some childhood friends of my wife, Aggie. And we were having a very nice time. My brain was thinking, what can I do? How can I get a dog to howl that doesn't howl? And an ambulance went by in the street outside with its siren on. And it faded into the distance, and then it somehow came into the house, into the basement, and started to make a siren sound from the basement. And I said, what's that? And they said, oh, that's Tansy. She always howls when ambulances go by. So I dropped my fork and ran down into the basement and opened the door, and there was Tansy, who was Toto. And I looked at her, she looked at me. It was a girl, by the way. And I went, woo, woo, woo. And she answered, woo. I said, you're going to be a star. And so it came to be. And as you see, she howls on command. And it's a genetic quirk that, Mike Culling was amazed. He had to go back to the source again. But he loved her, and she was hired for many other films and commercials after that, and probably sent the kids of the family to school. Anyway, that was one of those close calls that happened in film, and just when you think, this is never going to work, suddenly things flip and you get something wonderful.
Now, I had no clue about this Raiders of the Lost Ark connection through Tansy, or through the trainer, but this was something you bring up in the book, that Return to Oz was sort of designed to be an Indiana Jones type adventure,
right,
with the first Disney producers that you had. And I guess I'm interested in that transition so that everyone knows how incredible what you made is versus how different it would have been.
Yeah, this crisis was another one of those crises happened with the first change in management. And this was maybe 2 months before we were scheduled to start shooting. Suddenly there was a whole new regime, and they looked at the projects that were scheduled by the previous regime, of which Return to Oz was one. And they looked at the budget, they looked at the fact that it had no named people in it, that it was an expensive film because of what you see, but it was much more expensive in those days because we were going to shoot in Sardinia, where the Black Stallion had shot. We were going to shoot in Tunisia, the Sahara, where Star Wars had shot. And the bean counters did an analysis and said that budget doesn't translate in terms of this film. And so they said, we're going to put the film into turnaround, meaning we're going to abandon it. Maybe some other studio will pick it up. And as they left the room, the door almost closed, and they came back and they said, unless you rewrite the screenplay and cut $5 million out of the budget, click. So this was in November of '83. And, You know, it's one of those existential things like the dog doesn't help. So I sat down and in a week rewrote the screenplay and cut out a character, well, a bunch of characters. They're in the book and in that version of the screenplay, there was 6 or 7 soldiers who were all generals in an army, so there were human beings in addition to Tick-Tock and Jack and whatever. And so I said, I'm sorry guys, you're not going to be in the film. And that, the consequences of that made other things contract. And the other requirement was no foreign. You have to find Kansas in England. You can't go to Tunisia, you can't go to Sardinia. You have to do everything in London or in the environs around Elstree Studios. So that boiled down to Norman Reynolds completely rejigging his production schedule so he had to build the ruins of Oz. We were going to shoot that at Hadrian's Villa, just outside of Rome. So he was going to use an existing ruin and sort of re-Ozify it, I guess you'd say. So that was off. So we had to build in the back lot. We had to build what you see here with that tower and everything. But the problem was Kansas, 19th century Kansas, and this was pre-digital. So if you had some power lines in the distance, it wasn't easy to just say make them go away digitally. So this did, you know, we went out and kept searching in addition to doing everything else. And finally we went in the direction of Stonehenge. Rather than going north, we went west out of London.
Of course, Stonehenge.
Yes. And Richard Berger, the head of Disney, said, you have to phone me by 10:30 that you have found Kansas, and then I will give you a green light. If not, that's it. So at 10:25, we were still in the car looking. We hadn't found anything. I said, pull over at that pub there and give me some English change. And I dialed his number in this public telephone booth, and I said, Richard, you won't believe it. We found it. It's fantastic. I was in Kansas. We were going to shoot in Kansas. This is better than Kansas. And he said, great, you've got a green light. And I hung up the phone, and the walk back to the car was the longest walk. And I said, okay, Norman Reynolds was in the back, and I said, I just lied to the head of the studio that we found it. And he said, he grabbed my shoulder and he said, that's the spirit. And while the fates were listening, and we went over the next couple of hills and went on to the British munitions training ground where they do explosives. And it's an area of Wiltshire, 60 miles in diameter, that has been used for the last 200 years to blow things up, to test munitions. And as a result, there's no buildings on it. It's in the 19th century, basically. And that's what you see in the film. And in fact, if we had a camera if we had a drone back then, and we sent the drone up probably twice as high as this theater, the drone would see Stonehenge in the distance. And of course, I think stupidly, oh yes, the Wiltshire Plain. This is a plain, like the Kansas, the Great Plains. It's the same geology. which we weren't finding when we went north. Anyway, I learned a lot about creative lying at the appropriate moment and how to get out of these jams.
Now, it seems like it's a family affair of how you came to this electroshock therapy machine. It really is a real 1890s machine.
Yeah, and there was we human beings had just discovered that the body is full of electricity in the 19th century. What a revelation. That's nerves are little electric wires. And naturally they thought back then, oh, this is the answer to everything. When people are having health problems, all it is tangled nerves, like tangled hair. And all we have to do is comb it, just like combing the hair to to get rid of the knots. That's what we'll do. We'll introduce a slightly higher voltage and apply it, and it will relax all of the crazy tangled nerves. And this was electrotherapy, not electroshock, but electrotherapy. And there were hundreds and hundreds of these people, kind of like chiropractors, all over the United States at that time. We didn't know this when we were writing the screenplay, and we were looking for the thing that would propel Dorothy back to Oz. Because what was in the book was a shipwreck at sea. The Uncle Henry was going to visit his relatives in Australia, and Dorothy fell off the boat and wound up in Bellina's cage, which had also been carried off the boat. Anyway, I was looking in a family affair way. Our eldest daughter was going to leave home and get her own apartment, so we were looking for furniture to help her. So I went into a secondhand / antique kind of place and found a chest of drawers for her. But then a little antenna wiggled, and there was something over, what was that thing over there? And what that thing was that very electrotherapy machine. And it looked very much like the kind of objects that my father, who was a painter, would use as subject matter. And so that intrigued me. I wasn't making any kind of Oz connection here. And I said, how much is it? It's $125. I said, what is it? Well, it's an electrotherapy. This is a prototype of the machine back in 1904. The grandson of the man who invented it just died, and we're disposing of the contents of his estate. And so I put down $25 and promptly forgot about it because there was so much else going on. And my wife, Aggie, hello Aggie, a friend of hers wandered into the same shop, saw this thing with the name Murch on it, and thought, that must be something to do with Walter. He told Aggie, Aggie went to the shop, one thing led to another, and she wound up paying $25 a week to buy it for my birthday. So she bought it, and there it was in the summer of '82. And I thought, how wonderful. I put it up on the wall where I was writing the screenplay. And at, 2 o'clock in the morning, as I was pushing out the words, I suddenly felt something's looking at me. And I turned and looked, and I suddenly saw the face in that machine. And then very quickly, click, 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 I made the connection with TikTok, and then found out that all of this history of those people who were using electrotherapy around the turn of the century. And that's how that element of the story got put in place. Thank you, Aggie. Again, it's one of those, serendipitous things that you have to, at every stage when you're working on a film, in the writing and in the casting and in the production and, in the editing and even in the sound and everything, just always keep your antenna quivering because there are things out there trying to help you, and sometimes it looks they're masquerading as disasters, but that gets your attention. And so just keep going and know that frequently wonderful things come out of desperate situations.
Now, a lot of people in this room, I know that they have watched your movies, and I do think they think of them as, your movies, The Conversation being one of them. I know that the director has talked.
Yes, it was George, but there were a whole bunch of us, of which George was a star. He was a kid from Modesto who had wanted to be a race car driver, but had a terrible crash just before graduating high school, which was nearly fatal. And he thought, maybe not. And but he was then hanging out at the racetrack and accidentally, again another fateful coincidence, ran into Haskell Wexler, who had a thing about racing cars. And anyway, they got talking just about cars, and Haskell said, and I'm inventing here slightly, he said, "What are you doing here?" Well, I was racing, but I can't do it. I love to take photographs. And you should go to USC Cinema, Haskell said. And so he wound up going to USC Cinema. And at that time, there was a huge, relatively speaking, surge of people wanting to go to film schools. At that time, there were only 3, NYU, USC in LA, and UCLA in LA. But the teachers at the film schools were gobsmacked because they were used to about 20 students a year coming in. Suddenly it was 80, and they didn't have the equipment to, support that. And so they tried to scare us away by saying, "Why are you here? There are no jobs for you. Get out now," was their advice. And those of us who stuck with it just kind of bonded together because we were being told it's cold out there, so you better, keep together to stay warm. And that friendship with George was like the friendship with Matthew Robbins or with John Milius or Caleb Deschanel, who were all going to film school at Randall Kleiser at that time.
There's so many movies that from Rain People and THX 1138, which I think also your whole company went under because of 1138. Is this right? You were experimental. You were doing experimental work, and then you needed to shift away from that, or you wouldn't be able to keep making movies. It seems like.
Yeah.
So keeping that experimental element in mainstream movies, I'm curious if there are elements you could talk about in The English Patient, or which you won 2 Academy Awards for, and you are still the only person in the history of cinema to win Best Editing and Best Sound Editing for the same movie. Interested in what sort of experimental techniques you use that maybe we wouldn't notice in these mainstream films.
Well, we were in San Francisco, which is its own kind of Galapagos Island ecosystem of different arts and film. And so what we had wanted to do in leaving LA in 1969 was to create our own way of making movies.
I hope that after 40 years, enough people have been able to erase how difficult it must have been for the film to not succeed at the time. I know that you didn't direct another movie, a feature film after it.
Right.
And I kind of just want the audience to clap for you right now. It is sincerely such a profound film. And it finds the sweet spot of being a family movie that is just serious, and it is scary, but it's important maybe to overcome those fears. And I'm curious how you feel about the movie now.
Well, I mean, we weren't, I didn't go into it blind. I knew it was a highly risky thing to do, but what was the alternative? How would you make a non-risky version of the film? Or how would I do it? It would have to be a musical. And musicals in the early 80s were having the tradition of the musical at MGM, especially in the 30s, was a highly developed, it was kind of a kabuki system. You know, they knew how to do it back then. There were whole systems designed to nurture and feed musicals, but that had dissolved with the dissolve of the studios, certainly in the early 80s. And I was, as I said earlier, the books meant a huge amount to me because of the fact that my mother read them, all of them. They were like the Harry Potter books of their day. And my imaginative life was formed by those books. And I wanted to share that with a broader audience rather than the vaudevillian approach of 1939. And today we embrace the Judy Garland film, but that has a lot to do with things that were not present in the culture in 1939. But when that film came out in 1939, it was not a success. It only became a success when it started to be shown on television in the 50s, and people got used to it. I was with Maurice Sendak, the author, for he at one point he was going to do some production drawings for the film. And I went to visit him in Connecticut, and he said, I saw The Wizard of Oz as a kid when it came out, and I was absolutely terrified by the film. And if you've never seen it before, you have no knowledge of what's coming next, and you're a sensitive person, flying monkeys and the witch and everything. Those are powerful things, but there is relief because there's songs, and how scary can it be if there are songs? And the sets are obviously set, and the people are people in costume, so it's vaudeville, and so it can't really be scary. And in this film, I pulled that rug out from underneath the audience because no, this is real. This is really Kansas. In 1900, and these people are having trouble. So, yeah, I did throw everything into it. At that time, the Soviet Union was still the Soviet Union. The A-bomb and the H-bomb were still big things. And so, why am I making this film now? In that way, was to say to kids, and maybe even grown-ups, that no matter how terrifying that threat is, the gnome king who seems to be all-powerful, if you band together and if you're lucky and if you have the magic pill, the egg, symbol of life, somehow that's the thing that will undo the monster, which in my mind back then was nuclear destruction. We didn't know about global warming in those days. We just knew the bomb. And so in that sense, it was to say, despite overwhelming odds seemingly against you, you can still win. You can still defeat what seems to be overwhelmingly powerful. But everything that is overwhelmingly powerful has a weak spot, and in a weird way, the more powerful they are, the more that weak spot is a tender thing, and that's what we see in this film.
Walter, I can't think of anything more important that we need right now. Thank you so much. And everyone, please give a round of applause here. Thank you. Now we have a special treat for all of you who have stayed around. I reprinted the original sticker sheet that was handed out in 1985, and every one of you will get a copy of it as you leave the building so that you are not sticking anything anywhere. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Jesse Arthur Fix. This is Movies for Maniacs.